As long as I was going after the crooks that didn't have badges, I was everybody's hero.
Well, it's very nice to see you, Vic.
It's nice to be back, Jonathan. We didn't know if we'd get to do this.
We didn't, and little did I know I'd be seeing you again through a thin glass, plexiglass sheet.
Yeah, I know. I'm not used to this. Now, if I'd been found guilty, I'd be used to this by now.
Yeah.
Because one of the people we're going to be talking about today, Jan Patterson.
Yes.
Yeah, she had bragged that the only time I would see my son would be through a thick glass at the visiting room in Leavenworth. So, and now I'm getting to visit with you through well, it's not that thick.
It's not that thick. It's a little intrusive, but at the same time, it almost gives more of like a professional studio feel.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, man, I'm just going to direct the band through the glass.
It's a little more cloudy than what I had hoped for.
Yeah, I think we got to hit it with some Windex, maybe.
If this thing goes on where we have to keep social distancing for, a year or 2 or 3 or a decade, we'll get real glass put in here.
Yeah. The legacy continues, and today we get to talk about our dear Jan Patterson, and we've been teasing this part of the timeline for a while, and we've been a little off the rails timeline wise, but I'm happy to get back.
Yeah, well, and we're going to be off the rail a little bit here. It just became relevant to talk about her because her role in all this is now coming to light.
Right.
So we're jumping today up to an article that came out during my trial.
Right.
During the criminal trial when I was on trial for my life. And there's some things in this article that this article came out during my trial.
Okay.
When she was up here in Waco as the guest of honor at the Texas Ranger Hall of Fame reunion, Waco, Texas. Yes.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And so this article came out. And the reason this is important is because we're going to be getting back into the timeline.
Right.
We're just about finished with April 1985, people. Can you believe that? We've been on April 1985 for months.
For months? But you said it felt like it lasted years.
April 85 was one of the longest months of my life. Yeah, it seemed like it lasted several years. And just us hitting the highlights and talking about it, it's lasted several months. So anyway, we'll be talking about her because pretty soon we're going to be getting into what we called the monster motion.
The monster mash?
Yeah.
Monster
we call it the monster motion because it was this thick. The brains behind that was Jeff Kearney up in Fort Worth. He's an excellent criminal defense lawyer, and he was on my team in the beginning and helped us all through pretrial.
That's awesome.
Could not leave his practice and come down and go through a trial when I couldn't afford to pay him.
That'd be a little risky for a business owner.
Yeah. Now, after I won the Below verdict, I did go back and pay people, even though they hadn't sent a bill. And Jeff was somebody I sent a check to.
Nice.
And Gary and I worked out a different sort of split on the Below verdict in order to help compensate him for not charging me all through my criminal trial. So anyway, we're going to be talking about the monster motion. And in the monster motion are all these affidavits that allege, and not affidavits by me, affidavits by citizens who were approached by the FBI, by Jan Patterson, by Ron Border. And they're talking about this, how they were threatened and the prosecutorial misconduct that took place. And I really believe that was the reason she left the U.S. Attorney's Office, was at our motion. Even though Judge Nallen denied our motion, it would have been just incredible if he had granted it. But even when you're right, even when you're 100% right, they don't grant motions like that in federal court.
Yeah.
Especially in the Fifth Circuit, we are the most conservative circuit in the United States. And here, if you're indicted, you're guilty, man. That's what they think. And these guys are federal judges who are sworn to uphold the Constitution. And the Constitution says that you're presumed innocent until proven guilty.
Mm-hmm.
So we brought all this evidence forward, and we didn't get the case dismissed. But I do think Nallin had a different view of the case after that. He was a little easier on us, and as the trial went on, he got a lot easier on me and Gary.
Nice.
I mean, he threatened Gary with contempt at least 10 times.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, the first week. The first week. One time, 2 or 3 weeks into the trial, Judge Nallin told Gary Richardson, well, Mr. Richardson, you don't leave today. It was on a Friday. Mm-hmm. You don't leave today. You're going to be spending the weekend in our jail because of some of the things you've said here in this courtroom that I've ordered you not to say. And it was all about Henry Lucas because that's the reason I got indicted.
Right.
But Judge Nallin had ruled that it doesn't matter if you were retaliated against. Now, the newspaper articles said that Judge Nallin found that there was no evidence of prosecutorial misconduct. I never remember seeing that in writing.
Ooh.
What I remember seeing was, and if so, it might have been. There's been a lot of paperwork. I don't remember.
Yeah, there's some volumes of paperwork.
Volumes, boxes, truckloads.
Yeah.
And
that's a needle in a stack of needles.
Yeah, it is. But what I do remember him saying, and what he enforced throughout 2/3 of the trial, was that retaliation is not a defense in the Fifth Circuit.
Wow.
Meaning, I don't care if everything you're saying is true. It doesn't matter if they retaliated. It doesn't matter if they twisted arms and got people to lie. It doesn't matter because in the Fifth Circuit, we have a rule that says retaliation is not a defense.
That's wild.
When we were going, but Judge, it goes to the weight and credibility of the evidence.
Yeah.
It goes to the weight and credibility of every one of these witnesses who are getting up on this stand who had their arms twisted. Or as Gary used to say, this phrase that makes me laugh because it doesn't make any sense, but it makes sense. If you hold a fish out of water long enough, it'll say anything you want it to.
That's just ridiculous.
I love that phrase. He said that a lot in the trial. If you hold a fish out of water long enough.
Did he know that was wrong? Like that was kind of a blend of a couple things?
Gary doesn't care. That's Gary's personality. He'll get a phrase, and it doesn't matter whether it's
if it works and people understand it.
If it works, what he goes for is touching the spirit, touching the soul, getting down inside the brain. It doesn't have to be grammatically correct to work. It can be a mixed metaphor. It can be any, but if it works, and he said this over and over, you hold a fish out of water long enough, it'll say anything you want it to.
All right.
And that's what was happening with these men that were on the stand. They had been held out of the water so long, they were gasping for breath.
Yeah.
They didn't know if they were going to prison. They had been threatened by Jan Patterson. Their livelihoods had just about come to an end because they couldn't make a living because their names are always being dragged through the mud by Ron Border and the Texas Ranger propaganda machine that was behind trying to destroy me. Mm-hmm. And when they couldn't find anything just on me, well, then they decided to go after people that had been close to me. Yeah. Find something on them and make them testify against me to get off the hook and get back into the water.
Right.
And we've already talked about one of those guys. I mean, I really feel sorry for him because Jan Patterson made him a deal, but wouldn't put it in writing.
Oh, that's
greasy.
greasy.
And then when it came time for the U.S. Attorney's Office to follow through on that deal, well, she was no longer there. But mean as she is, she said, no, there was never such a deal.
Wow.
There was never such a deal. Well, they were mad because they lost the case.
Of course.
This lawyer hired a lawyer up in Dallas to defend him, and that lawyer did a polygraph.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah. I got a copy of that polygraph in the mail in an anonymous envelope like 10 or 15 years later. Mm-hmm. And it showed that this lawyer had actually passed the polygraph and that Jan Patterson was lying.
Surprise.
I wish they'd have given him a polygraph before he ever testified to see, is what you're saying true? But see, Jan Patterson didn't care what was true.
Correct.
She had no regard for the truth at all. And we've already talked before, and we're going to post these transcripts on our website pretty soon of the grand jury that indicted me.
Right.
I had somebody send me an email recently going, well, I want to know what all the evidence was that the grand jury saw that indicted you. It couldn't have been just the Channel 8 episodes. Yeah, it was.
It was just them.
Just that. Because I have the transcripts of all the grand juries that looked at me, and there were 4 of them.
Right.
And that last one was a new green grand jury. And if you recall from my arrest video, and when they're taking me away from the courthouse, after they had taken me in, searched the office, made me let them in.
Right.
I got Cindy Campos, my legal assistant, to get Gary Richardson on the phone. He's headed for the airport. Then they're walking me back downstairs, and the reporters are out front with the cameras going, what's going on here, Vic? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, they're going to have a hard time proving this. Now, they might have gotten that green grand jury. I call them a green grand jury because I knew they were brand new.
Yeah.
They might have gotten that green grand jury to indict me, but they're not going to have an easy time proving this in court. And they didn't.
Question, though. Did you ever have the opportunity to speak to any of those people who were on that grand jury?
No.
How about any of the previous grand juries?
No, I don't even know who they were.
Wow.
Yeah, it just says grand juror 1, grand juror 2
right.
when you read the transcript. So no, I don't know who they were. But I hope some of them have followed this, because if they have, they know they got duped.
Yeah.
Especially the one who says, Miss Patterson, I want to know what this reporter in Dallas, what he was doing going after a Waco DA.
Yep.
And Patterson interrupts. I mean, that question was asked to Ron Border, and Patterson interrupts and says, I don't think this witness knows anything about that. Let's move on.
Isn't that crazy?
They then sent him out of the room, and they voted
him down. Wow.
Yeah, and she knew because she had been at the big brass meeting the night we got Henry away.
Right.
She had been in on everything from the very beginning. She knew about the Ramada Inn meeting with Ron Border, Bill Johnson, and Duncan.
Yep.
Charles Duncan, Channel 8 News. And later on, when we get into our thicker file on Jan Patterson, we're going to put on our website a letter that she wrote 2 years after I was found not guilty to the Private Investigator Board as a reference for Charles Duncan, talking about what a great job he had done helping her with an investigation that resulted in an indictment for corruption.
Yep.
She didn't bother to say everything the guy said was a damn lie.
Right.
She didn't bother to say that I was found not guilty. But I've got the letter.
It's just wild, man, that she would still take any position at all towards anybody relating to this case. I mean, I figured after they kind of moved her on that she would just be like, all right, need to not touch this ever again.
That's true. And but we know that's not the case. She wrote the letter for Charles Duncan, bragging on him so he could get his PI license. Ugh. Oh, God. I pity the public. And she was at this Ranger reunion even after she was no longer at the U.S. Attorney's office.
Right.
And then she wrote that op-ed piece for the Waco Trib when Colonel Jim Adams died.
Correct.
Just this past May.
That blew me away when you sent me the article, Vic. That's how I found out. And to see that she was the one who actually wrote his, I don't know what you want to call that. Just not an obituary, but a little celebration of life. That's mind-blowing.
Yeah, I know.
Because I didn't think they would still have any connection at all at this point. But this really goes to show, even in 2020, that they still had a pretty deep-seated intertwining. It's crazy.
Well, that's just part of the nature of the deep state. And Jan Patterson was part of that. And Colonel Jim Adams was one of the very top heads of it when it comes to the bureaucracy. Yeah. I don't mean these guys in the military industrial complex, the 0.1% of the richest people on the planet who are selling weapons to everybody. So we'll use them against each other and kill each other. Yeah. And they get rich. And they're the ones behind a lot of this social media. They're the ones behind a lot of the news that we watch to keep us at each other's throats.
Yeah, just keep the kids playing.
Yeah. It keeps us mad at each other, and, well, I'm not going to take that. Well, I'm not going to take that. Well, I'm going to fight you. Well, I'm going to fight you. Well, I'm going to fight you with this weapon. Well, I'll get a bigger one. Well, I'll get a bigger one. And it's the same guys selling the weapons to all the sides because they want to keep you fighting. They want to keep killing people. They want to keep the population down, and they want to own everything.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, the way things are going, unless the people stand up, they will own everything.
Yes.
Property taxes are about to go up by 25%. That's what they're talking about in Austin. Mm-hmm. People are going to lose their homes left and right. We're all going to be renters. We're all going to be leasers. What it comes down to is that we're all going to be sharecroppers.
But remember, too, we talked about that in the previous episode. The new generations coming up, Vic, they want that. That is ingrained in them now. I'm a rental generation. I don't want to own. I want to rent my Netflix. I want to rent a car. I want to rent my apartment. That's all they want.
Well, I can understand that in a way. It gives you mobility. You don't have a whole bunch of stuff you don't need. But at the same time, you don't want to be programmed and controlled by major corporations and their propaganda machines.
Yep.
These major corporations and even some of our law enforcement agencies have propaganda machines that make Hitler's propaganda machine look like a Boy Scout picnic. I'm telling you, it's gotten very, very sophisticated. They have algorithms that do it now.
If you don't think this has been a focus grouped for decades and totally sharpened to perfection, you'd be crazy.
It's to turn us against each other. Mm-hmm. And the only salvation we have away from that, people, is for us to raise our consciousness.
Yep.
And Jonathan, we were talking just this morning.
We were.
About how I have been saying, well, we've been doing this podcast nearly a year now.
A year this month, Vic.
A year this month.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
We have like 70 episodes in.
Yes, we do.
Cool.
And we're starting to pick up our pace again now that we've got our fancy
bulletproof glass here.
Our fancy plexiglass here. Yeah. I don't like it. I want to get some real glass so that we can polish up. But raising the consciousness is the only way that we're going to be able to deal with all this. And what John and I were talking about this morning is that we're going to start dedicating a podcast ever so often, or maybe a mini cast.
Yeah, there you go.
What is evolution of consciousness? What does that mean? And how can I do it? Does it work or is it bullshit? You know? And I want to talk to you guys about that because I know that it works. And I know what it is. And I'd like for our listeners, and I know this is a true crime podcast and a story about what happened to me, but at the same time, I learned so much. I grew so much spiritually as a result that I started understanding what is evolution of consciousness and how do we do it?
Right.
How do we do it? It's a step at a time kind of thing, and it works.
It does work.
That's what we got to do. So let's talk about Jan Patterson and the Texas Ranger reunion.
Let's do it.
Hall of Fame. This was on June the 2nd, 1987. I was in the middle of my criminal trial down in Austin. Mm-hmm. Jan had been removed from the case. And this article will talk a little about
where'd she go? Well, let's kick it off. So the title of the article is Jan Patterson Resigns from the Justice Department. All right. Yeah, this is from June 2nd, 1987.
Right in the middle of my... Yeah, now that's not when she resigned. That's when she let them know she had resigned.
Gotcha.
But it was right before my trial started.
Man.
And I'm telling you, I bet she was some kind of mad when they didn't let her try my case.
She was some kind of mad.
And I guarantee you that our monster motion had something to do with it. It did.
Something spooked him.
I think Nallen believed part of it. Mm-hmm. He had already gotten mad at her a couple times
Really? Over
during
what?
some of the pretrial stuff. Yeah.
What was she doing? Was she just trying to pull some...
Manipulating the grand jury and threatening people. And at one point, even arranged it so that one lawyer would be called in late on a Friday and ask a question that he couldn't answer. And she already had the motions ready, and they went and filed it in front of Nallin. And this was before Nallin started seeing the light. And they locked this guy up all weekend.
No way.
Yeah, and he was an elderly man, and they locked him up all weekend.
Just maximum damage.
Because he wasn't willing to go up there and lie to him. But after he got home so shaken, and his wife told me that when she was helping him undress to get in the shower, that he noticed he still had on a pair of Travis County jail issue underwear.
Oh, man.
And he just broke down and cried.
Yeah.
And that's when everything changed, and they decided to go state's witness, federal witness against me. And that's the kind of bullshit that they were doing. They had no regard at all for the truth. So what'd you read there?
All right. So Jan Patterson resigns from the Justice Department. So it says U.S. Attorney Jan Patterson, who led the investigation into wrongdoings in McLennan County District Attorney's Office for the past 2 years, revealed in Waco Saturday that she resigned her position approximately 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. So that would have been like right the day my trial started. She was probably getting them to let her in there up until the day my trial started.
Right.
And I still would not be at all surprised if somebody in that office said to her, Jan, we're going to give you a choice. You can resign or you can get fired.
You think so?
I think so.
Wow.
I really think so, because she had a pretty cush job there. And the Rangers and the law enforcement people just loved her because she would take their trash cases.
Yeah.
And in federal court, man, just push them through.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, why wouldn't you like someone like that?
She wouldn't care if Donnie Tidmore had committed trespass to get probable cause for a search warrant. She wouldn't care. She wouldn't care if a policeman shot a drug suspect in the gut while he had his hands cuffed behind him. She didn't care. But see, those are things as DA that I was looking off into and getting the cops just really pissed at me because I wasn't supposed to violate the law enforcement brotherhood. Jeez. Now, what we see going on in our streets today, Jonathan, the death, how it's not safe to be a black person on the streets in this country because of those armed people in blue who just want to kill your ass. And here again, I'm not saying all of them are that way. Right. Susan, if you're watching, I too have known a lot of good policemen. I was on the Austin Police Department for a while. It was an Austin policeman who talked me into going to college. So, yeah. But a lot of our problems on the street today is because of the things that have been allowed for years and years and years and years to where you don't violate the law enforcement brotherhood.
Right.
Nobody with a badge is going to snitch on somebody else with a badge. That's why those other officers watching that one officer with his knee down on George Floyd's neck wouldn't tell him to get off. They wouldn't tell him to stop. They were rookies, you know? And you're taught from day one, you don't violate the law enforcement brotherhood. We don't snitch on each other. We don't tell each other that you're doing wrong. And that's just the wrong philosophy. Yeah. Now, when they start talking about dismantling the police, I'm not in favor of that. But I am in favor of dismantling their mindset. Yeah. The way they've been trained, the way they've been taught. And I am in favor of getting rid of a lot of them who have had behavioral issues in the past. We've got policemen working who are guilty of family violence all the time. And yet it's overlooked because they're policemen, you know? And then so they go out and they see a big black man and they think, oh, well, he might have drugs. Let's shake him down. And then if he resists at all, if he even wiggles a little, they're going to tase him, just like they tased Robert Earl Williams here in Waco, that case you and I handled 15 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah, 2005.
2005.
2005, where 4 officers tased him to death. And I'm still trying to find the video, because I really think I remember seeing video of the officers around him at the scene, but all I've been able to find so far is the after-the-fact video.
Right.
But they tased that Vietnam vet to death because he was a big black man.
Yep.
He was a little bit disoriented, and they just kept on tasing him. And most of the tasing that was done while he was laying on the ground.
Correct.
And they kept saying, roll over on your stomach. Well, and he wouldn't roll over on his stomach. So they'd tase him. They considered that resisting because he wouldn't roll over on his stomach. And then their excuse later, weeks later, was that, well, there was a piece of rebar laying about 20 feet away. He could have gotten to that rebar. Oh, come on. You afraid he's going to concrete you into the driveway or something? No way. He couldn't even roll over on his stomach. No way he could have gotten to that rebar.
Correct.
And we lost that case. And never got to a jury. We lost it because the judges took it away from us. And that's because too many of our judges have been indoctrinated the same way the police have.
Yep. Yeah. We need an overhaul, Vic.
Yeah.
A lot of work needs to be done.
We do.
But you know what? But it can be done, Vic.
It can.
It can be done.
But it can only be done by all of us raising our consciousness.
Yes.
It hurts me to the core, people, when I see on Facebook somebody can put out some remark, and then it'll have a feed 3 feet long with people arguing with each other and calling each other names over stuff that doesn't matter, over shades of a label, over this or that. Leave it alone. Let's raise our consciousness. Let's let go of these negative feelings. Let's go of the impulse to always want to argue and fight. And let's embrace one another.
Yeah, man.
That's what raising of the consciousness is. And the only way we're going to change our system is for all of us to quit fighting with each other too. I like that old Coca-Cola commercial, you know. I'd like...
The one with the polar bears?
No, not the polar bears. No, before you were born. I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And they're all holding hands and singing. I'd like to buy the world a Coke and keep it company.
Now, was that back when Coke still had cocaine in it?
No.
Oh.
No, I'm not that old.
Remember those days?
No, that was back. That was way before my time.
That's crazy that it used to be in there, though. That's insane. Oh, God, Vic. Well, glad we've consciously moved on from cocaine in our soft drinks.
Yeah, that's true. It shouldn't be in our soft drinks. But, you know, if somebody's crazy enough to want to do it, if it were legal, it'd be cheap. And then most people wouldn't care about doing it.
Yeah, probably.
You know, the problem with it now is it's so expensive. You can get addicted to it the first time you use it. And before you know it, you're in jail. You're broke.
Yeah, man.
You know, you're divorced. All of that. You know, I think the biggest problem with all drugs is that they're illegal. I think you should let people make up their own minds based on their own level of consciousness. And if they're not taking care of their kids, well, then CPS could come in then instead of coming in and messing with parents that are doing a good job.
Yep. Solutions, Vic. That's what we're all about here. We're
Solutions,
all about solutions.
Raising the consciousness.
Well, speaking of solutions, Jan Patterson resigns.
Yeah, that was a solution. That made my day.
So basically she revealed approximately 2 weeks ago. Okay, great. So she said she related her resignation when questioned about not being present at the Austin trial. So there you go. She wasn't. Now, did you know really that she was going to be gone? Did anybody through the grapevine say like, yo, Jan Patterson's out?
We started hearing about a week before the trial started that this guy named Feazell was going to try it.
Gotcha.
But we were thinking Jan Patterson was going to be in there too. It wasn't until right toward the very end that we noticed that she wasn't there.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Were you happy?
Yes, I was. I was.
Good. Fair enough. And said she was attending the Texas Ranger reunion, like you said, at Fort Fisher.
Yeah, Fort Fisher, right here in Waco.
And she said,
and this is kind of funny. Now, most people aren't old enough to remember F Troop. It was an old sitcom. Google it. F Troop. It was about a cavalry troop, and they were called F Troop.
It was like a Hogan's Heroes where a bunch of dunces.
Yeah, it was like Hogan's Heroes, only it was in the West.
Nice.
Yeah, behind a fort. It was F Troop. Well, funny enough, this Rangers squad here in Waco is called F Troop.
No way.
Yeah, way.
Oh.
So Google F Troop if they've got some old.
Good show though.
You know, so long ago I don't remember. But if Hogan's Heroes is still good, then F Troop would still be good because it was the same thing, only set in the Wild West.
It's like MASH. You know, there was just that whole stream of those.
Mm-hmm.
MASH, Black Sheep Squadron. Remember that one?
I do.
Like all those little. Man, that's reaching back even before my own day, but I watched them. Reruns. Anywho, so part of the reason for her resignation was DA Vic Feazell's allegations that she was guilty of prosecutorial misconduct.
Yeah.
Ooh, the plot thickens, Vic.
Read me that part again. Part of her reason.
Yeah.
Oh, here
for
it
her
is.
resignation was DA Vic Feazell's. Hey, that's you. Allegations that she was guilty of prosecutorial misconduct.
Now, why would she resign? Just because I made allegations of prosecutorial?
They were true.
Why'd you resign, Jan, if all I did was make allegations of prosecutorial misconduct? It's because it was true, and we were prepared to start bringing those people in there, one after the other, who had signed those affidavits that we're going to get to when we get to the monster motion.
Right.
I mean, yeah, I was glad she wasn't on it. I felt like Frail's, even though he pulled a couple dirty tricks, he's just a better person than she is, and more honest. But if she had tried that, Gary Richardson would have eaten her up.
Yeah.
Because he had already been messing with her and setting her up with little insults here and there along the way, little slights.
What do they call her?
Well, he always called her Patty.
Patty.
Hey, Patty. It's not Patty. My name is Jan Patterson. All right, Jan. Sorry about that. Hey, Patty. When are we going to resume this thing? Hey, Patty. Do you have this?
Jeez.
I'm not Patty. and then he did some other things I'm not going to talk about.
That's
but no, he was playing her like a fiddle. Hi, I'm Vic Feazell. During these trying times, you might want to just stay home. And at the law offices of Vic Feazell, we understand. That's why we're set up to handle your personal injury claim without you even having to come in. Just give us a call, and we'll take it from there. We can send any paperwork straight to your smartphone or computer. Don't delay, because if we don't put money in your pocket, you don't owe us anything. I'm Vic Feazell.